Vashti's courage, the divine queen who said no and experienced God's miraculous plan revealed. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, when Nebuchadnezzar was king over Babylon, and the splendor of the Persian Empire shone brightly in Susa, there resided Queen Vashti, a woman of unmatched beauty and strength. It was during one such moment of grandeur, as King Ahasuerus hosted a great feast for his nobles and officials, that Vashti found herself caught in a tempest of conflicting emotions. The hall glittered with golden cups, the air rich with laughter and the scent of lavish delicacies, yet beneath the revelry, an unsettling command loomed over her spirit. The king, in a drunken state of revelry, sought to demonstrate the glory of his reign by summoning Vashti to display her beauty before the gathering. "Bring forth Vashti, wearing the royal crown," he ordered, his voice echoing through the opulent hall. A hush fell upon the nobles, eyes glittering with curiosity, waiting eagerly for their queen, a mere object in their king's extravagant show. But deep in her heart, Vashti's resolve pressed against her. She had been raised in the faith of her ancestors, who extolled the worthiness of women, created in the image of God, deserving of dignity and respect. The echoed laughter of the hall felt like a distant storm as she stood in her chambers, grappling with a choice that could lead to her demise or her liberation. To compromise my integrity, she thought, would be to cast aside the very essence of my soul. Vashti knew the implications of her choice well. Refusing the king's command could cost her everything. The crown she wore, the comforts of the palace, perhaps even her life. Yet as she sought God's wisdom in the silence of the night, clarity enveloped her. With every prayer whispered and every moment of contemplation, she felt an unspeakable pull towards bravery. The thought of compliance settled like ash upon her spirit and ignited within her the flames of righteous defiance. When she stepped onto the marble balcony, the chatter ceased, and a palpable tension filled the air. The king's gaze locked upon her, an expectant fire burning in his eyes. With chin lifted high and heart racing, Vashti proclaimed, "I will not come." A seismic gasp cascaded through the assembly, and the weight of her words clashed violently with the king's fury. Ahasuerus, shocked and enraged, summoned his advisers. This act of disobedience shook the air, triggering a fierce debate among them about honor and rebellion, a collision of tradition and fierce independence. Though a decree for her banishment fell, her heart felt light. In that moment of elevation above mere spectacle, Vashti discovered a profound sense of liberty. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Though cast away, Vashti unknowingly woven herself into the fabric of God's sovereign plan. Her act of courageous defiance set forth a train of events that would touch countless lives. The seeds of deliverance for her people, the Israelites, began to stir. Hope flickered in her heart as the darkness of despair began to gather around her. What divine mysteries were at work from her act of courage? And would she realize the impact her bravery had as God orchestrated his purpose through her sacrifice? The shadows grew long over her fate, leaving the echoes of her bravery to resonate in the chambers of destiny, intertwining with the tale of another destined for greatness, Esther. And it came to pass, after Queen Vashti had been cast out, that the king's heart was heavy with sorrow. In his palace of Susa, the laughter that once filled the halls now faded like a distant memory. Without the light of Vashti's presence, Ahasuerus felt the weight of solitude pressing upon him, and he turned to his advisers, seeking counsel. "What shall be done?" he lamented, "for I have lost the jewel of my kingdom. Can the heart of a king be restored without the love of his queen?" Then the wise men, who understood the ways of the Persians, spoke to him, saying, "Let there be a search throughout the kingdom for beautiful maidens, and let each be brought unto you, that you may choose one to take the place of Vashti. Her beauty must be matched, that the spirit of the kingdom might be lifted once more." With resolve, Ahasuerus agreed to their counsel. "Let it be done according to your word." Thus a decree was issued throughout the land, and maidens from every province were gathered, brought forth into the royal presence. In a distant land, far beyond the walls of Susa, there lived a young maiden named Esther, known as Hadassah among her kin. Orphaned in her youth, she was raised by her cousin Mordecai, a man of great faith and devotion to the God of Israel. He taught her the ways of their ancestors, the stories of deliverance and promise that had been handed down through generations. When Esther received the news of the king's search, fear mingled with curiosity in her heart. What would be my place in this grand unfolding, she wondered. Is it mere chance that I find myself in the kingdom at such a time? Mordecai, sensing the stirring in her soul, approached her. Do not think, my beloved cousin, that you will escape this decree, for if you remain silent, deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Who knows? He spoke with urgency. Whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Esther pondered these words, recognizing the weight of her lineage and the calling resting upon her shoulders. In faith, she resolved, I shall go to the king, though it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. Days passed, and the maidens were prepared to stand before Ahasuerus, adorned in finest garments, their hearts a swirl of hope, trepidation, and ambition. When Esther's turn came, she approached the king with a spirit of humility. She was taken with grace and beauty that shone with an inward strength, captivating the heart of Ahasuerus. With a deepened gaze, he proclaimed, Esther, you have found favor in my sight more than all the women, and your beauty surpasses that of the rest. You shall be queen in Vashti's stead. And as the royal crown was placed upon her head, a heavenly whisper stirred in the spirit of Esther, intertwining her fate with that of her people. Little did she know that the echoes of Vashti's defiance had opened the door to her divine purpose, and the destiny of the Israelites hung precariously upon the choices that lay before her. Thus the plot thickened, and the pages of history turned as God's sovereign design began to shape the lives of those who walked with him. How would Esther's journey unfold amidst the shadows and dangers that loomed? Would she heed Mordecai's wisdom and stand for her people, or would fear snatch away her brave heart? For the stage was set, and the orchestration of God's plan was in motion. But a greater revelation awaited, hidden beneath the current of this unfolding story. What battles would ensue? And how would the hands of fate weave together the fabric of deliverance? It was but the beginning of a tale that would alter the course of a nation. And it came to pass that after Esther was crowned, the kingdom rejoiced in the splendor of her presence. The royal court buzzed with excitement, and the praises of the people rose like incense before the throne. In the days that followed, Esther found favor with the king, and her wisdom began to shine through the veil of her beauty. Yet as the light of this new queen illuminated the palace, shadows of peril loomed ever closer. For within the corridors of power, an enemy plotted against the Jews. Haman, the Agagite, who had risen to great prominence as the king's chief adviser. His heart was filled with pride, and he sought the reverence of all, so much so that he demanded the bowing of all men before him, but Mordecai would not bow, for he knew that to honor a man above God was an abomination. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel before him, his rage was kindled. In his wrath he charged forth to the king, saying, There exists a people scattered throughout the provinces whose customs are different from those of all others. They do not keep the king's laws, therefore it is not fitting for the king to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued for their destruction, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the king's treasury. Ahasuerus, hearing this, was swayed by Haman's cunning words. He took his signet ring and sealed the decree, sending it throughout the land, declaring that on a certain day, all Jews should be annihilated. Meanwhile, when Mordecai learned of the decree, he tore his clothes and donned sackcloth and ashes, mourning deeply for his people. Through the turmoil, he sent word to Esther, imploring her to intercede before the king, saying, Do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. Esther, receiving this message, felt the weight of her responsibility. She sent a reply to Mordecai, expressing her fear. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law, to be put to death unless the king holds out the golden scepter. Yet Mordecai pressed on with the truth that stirred her spirit. If you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish." And who, Esther, troubled by the gravity of the situation, took a moment to reflect upon the fate of her people and the weight of her destiny. Her heart beat with the echoes of Mordecai's plea, urging her toward action despite the trepidation that gripped her soul. In her heart she felt the stirring of divine purpose, knowing that perhaps she had been brought to the kingdom for such a time as this. With resolute faith, she called for her maidens and commanded them to prepare her for an audience with the king. "Gather the people," she said, "and let them fast for me. I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Her words held the weight of a faithful resolve, reflecting the strength that comes from a heart entrusted to the Lord. 3 days passed as Esther and her handmaidens fasted and prayed, seeking divine wisdom and strength. On the morning of the 4th day, adorned in her royal garments, she steadied herself, knowing that the golden scepter must be extended by the king for her approach to be accepted. She entered the inner court, and her breath caught as the king looked upon her with favor, extending the scepter in his hand. Esther approached, her heart racing, and laid hold of the scepter, thanking God silently for his mercy. "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request?" Ahasuerus asked, his voice commanding yet laced with concern. If it had been another day, Esther might have laid out her grievance with urgency. Yet wisdom filled her heart as she replied, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet that I have prepared for them." Her invitation was shrewd, a veil of prudence covering her anxious heart. The king, intrigued, summoned Haman, and together they attended the banquet, where Esther served them richly, yet her heart bore the weight of her people's doom. As they feasted, Ahasuerus inquired again, "What is your request? It shall be granted to you, even to the half of my kingdom." The moment had come, yet Esther hesitated, sensing that the reveal must hold profound significance. "My petition is this," she began, her voice trembling yet firm. "If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be granted to me and my people, for we are sold to be destroyed, slain, and annihilated." The king's brow furrowed, confusion clouding his gaze. Haman, realizing too late the implications of her words, found his heart beating wildly, guilt flooding him. "Who is he, and where is he?" the king demanded, his voice rising with righteous fury. Esther, emboldened by the Holy Spirit, pointed to Haman and declared, "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman." The tension in the room swelled, a palpable heaviness cloaking the air. Swiftly, the king arose from the banquet in wrath and left the chamber, while Haman stood, terrified before the queen. In that moment, the turn of fate was upon them, the sovereign hand of God sealing the fate of the wicked. Outside, the king ruminated in disquiet, preparing to give justice to the oppressed. Meanwhile, Esther's heart lifted, for she discerned within the storm the orchestration of a divine plan, where God's hand was weaving deliverance for his people. Yet as the story unfolded, a greater mystery loomed, a question whispered upon the winds of providence. What greater purpose was entwined in this moment of tension and fate, as God prepared to demonstrate his sovereignty in the lives of those who trust in him? When the king returned, his expression fierce, he found Haman trembling in the presence of Queen Esther. In a voice measured with wrath, he commanded, "Take this man away. He has brought evil upon my queen and her people." Haman's countenance fell as realization struck him with the weight of death. The very breath that had carried the whispers of his treachery now felt like chains binding him to despair. Esther watched with a heart mixed between mercy and justice, recalling the words of Mordecai, who had taught her the true nature of divine deliverance. As Haman was led away, the king sought counsel on how to address this grievous matter. Within the dark confines of his heart, Haman, in his desperation, quelled the deepening thoughts of remorse and devised a plan to save his very own life. He pleaded for Esther's mercy, but his voice was lost within the tide of royal decree. "Haman will breathe no more," the king declared, "for he has sought to destroy my beloved queen and has plotted against her people." With fervor, he ordered that Haman be hanged on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai, showcasing the depths of divine justice that shattered the schemes of the wicked. Esther's heart soared with fervent gratitude for God's hand that delivered her from peril, as she recognized the truth spoken in Proverbs. The wicked shall be caught in their own schemes. Yet, amidst joy, there arose another challenge. As the date of destruction loomed, a decree lay still in the king's hand, sealing the fate of her people, a weight far heavier than the joy of Haman's demise. Esther, draped once more in royal robes, approached the king once again, compelled by the love for her people, and a heart yearning for their salvation. "My lord," she spoke, as her voice trembled with a deeper understanding of her purpose. "If it pleases the king, let my life be spared along with that of my people. Let there be a decree to counteract the one that was set in motion." Ahasuerus, his heart softened by Esther's words, sought the counsel of his scribes. The quills scratched across the parchment, words born of urgency and deliverance. "Let it be known that the Jews shall be granted the right to defend themselves against any who come to destroy them." As he rolled the scroll, sealing it with his signet, the air was thick with a hope ignited anew. Esther bowed deeply, her heart in fervent prayer, thanking the God of Israel for the heart of the king. Inside her stirred the knowledge that these events were woven within a divine tapestry, each thread serving a higher purpose ordained by God. As word spread throughout the citadel, the Jewish people rejoiced. They prepared themselves for what was to come. The outcome remained uncertain, yet trust anchored their souls in the Lord's promise, echoing the truths of Psalm 34:7. "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them." But darkness hovered as the uncertainties loomed ahead. The real battle was upon them. For as the day of reckoning approached, a deeper revelation awaited. As the heavens watched over the unfolding scene, a promise foreshadowed. God was not merely bringing deliverance, but establishing a stronger thread of covenant through his people. Now, in the shadows of courage and devotion, the true purpose revealed itself. For through Esther's voice, the destiny of a nation would be revitalized, which stirred the hearts of the people of Israel. As they prepared for battle, the hearts of many would be changed in the face of God's sovereign plan. Little did they know, the enemy would soon learn that in the hands of God, even the mightiest are but instruments in the unfolding story of his eternal glory. What further surprising twist awaited, as the righteousness of God promised to redefine lives amidst trials? As the dawn broke over the citadel, a heavy mist clung to the air, echoing the uncertainty that hung in the hearts of the people. In the chambers of the palace, whispers of fear and hope intertwined as the Jewish community prepared for the impending conflict. Esther, aware of the weight upon her shoulders, sought the Lord through prayer and fasting, gathering her courage for the day ahead. The day of the decree had arrived, and the streets were alive with hushed anticipation. Word had spread that the Jews were allowed to defend themselves, but how could they contend against an empire? As Esther moved among her people, her heart was filled with their resolve, their faith a balm for her spirit. She sensed that God's providence was at work, though shadows lingered, threatening to encircle them once more. In the quiet hours of the morning, a murmuring arose among the people. As they gathered in synagogues, voices united in fervent prayers, remembering the words of their ancestors in Psalms. "Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." Psalm 124:8. A sacred fire ignited within them, driven by a promise far older than their present plight. Meanwhile, within the palace walls, Ahasuerus sat upon his throne, laden with the knowledge of the bloodshed Haman had orchestrated. The winds of change howled through the corridors of power, compelling him to summon his advisers. "What further can be done?" he asked, eyes piercing through the assembled men. "How can we secure peace in this tumultuous hour?" Among them stood a wise elder, a man well versed in the histories of their land. "Your Majesty, perhaps it is time to acknowledge the God of the Jews, whose hand has been evident in the recent events. It is said that nations fall not by sheer might, but by he who ordains their fate," he counseled, his words trembling with piety. Ahasuerus pondered this deeply, recalling Esther's beauty and strength, her faith that had brought deliverance to his own heart. He instructed the elder to prepare a proclamation, one which would call for unity and the endorsement of the Jewish people, signaling a shift toward reconciliation rather than conflict. As the hour drew near for both the Jews and their oppressors, Esther stood before the gathered crowd, an emblem of hope. "Brothers and sisters, "We are at a crossroad," she began, her voice steady despite the tumult in her heart. "Though darkness sought to consume us, we stand as witnesses to divine intervention. Our God is mighty to save. He fights our battles. Let us prepare ourselves not merely for war, but for the revelation of His glory among us." The people's faces glowed with renewed fervor, ignited by her words of courage. They resolved to fast and pray, uniting their hearts in worship and surrender. Indeed, God was stirring in their midst, preparing not just a defense, but a revival. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle in the vast sky, the tension in the kingdom reached its zenith. Tribes and nations gathered, summoned by decree, as armies assembled on the outskirts, resting upon their swords, plotting the downfall of the very ones God was ordaining for victory. In the silence of that sacred night, a strange peace befell Esther as she took to her chambers. "Lord," she murmured, "your ways are higher than ours, your thoughts above ours. What should we do? Reveal your plan." Unknown to her, all of heaven watched with bated breath. The heart of the king, the fate of a nation, and the unfolding tapestry of divine history hung in the balance, waiting for the next thread of God's grand design to wend its way through time. Each stitch awaited the mighty hand of the Almighty, poised to deliver His people in ways unforeseen as they marched toward the dawn of destiny. What further surprises lay hidden in the depths of God's sovereign plan? As the sun rose, illuminating the citadel with its golden rays, the air buzzed with an electricity born of anticipation and dread. Esther had fasted and prayed, sinking deeper into the well of divine wisdom, seeking clarity for a moment that would change the trajectory of her people forever. Little did she know that in this very hour, a revelation was unfolding beneath the surface of royal intrigue. The king had summoned the leaders of the provinces, an assembly gathered in the great hall, each face reflecting hard decisions and grave consequences. Ahasuerus looked among them, his heart heavy with the knowledge of his previous decrees. "My lords," he began, the weight of authority heavy on his shoulders, "our kingdom stands at a precipice. The question before us is no longer whether we should stand against the Jews, but how we might seek understanding instead of bloodshed." At that moment, the door to the hall creaked open, revealing the figure of Esther, her countenance radiant yet solemn. "If it pleases the king and his council," she began, her voice steady, "let me speak on behalf of my people. We have not sought conflict, but mercy and peace." A hush fell across the room, for Esther's beauty was not merely external. It exuded strength and grace, her very presence evoking a divinely inspired silence. Was it not the Lord God who delivered a remnant from Egypt, who parted the sea for Moses and led with a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day? Esther continued, propelled by the Spirit. "He calls us not to fight as the world fights, but to hold fast to His promises and trust in His deliverance. He can turn the hearts of kings and the designs of men." As she spoke, the nobles and leaders, men hardened by ambition and pride, found their hearts swayed. The atmosphere thickened with the presence of God, weaving threads of fear and hope within their spirits. Ahasuerus felt an unfamiliar tension in his heart. Was it guilt or conviction? Could their paths have been different had they sought God rather than their own glory? Undeterred, the king leaned forward. "What do you propose, Queen Esther? A covenant of submission or an alliance against our foes?" His brow furrowed, echoing uncertainty. "If we are to forge a path forward, let it be through understanding. Let us proclaim a new decree to protect the Jews, remembering that true strength lies in love and reconciliation. This is our moment to embrace our common humanity and seek the face of God who, I believe, has ordained this very moment for His purpose," she urged, her words flowing like a river of life. Unexpectedly, an elder among the nobles who had been silent until this moment rose. "Your Majesty," he declared, "I have witnessed truth in her words. We have long sought power, but that pursuit has brought nothing but chaos. Perhaps it is time we heed the voice of the Queen and align ourselves with that which is good and just." The king nodded thoughtfully. "Then let us issue a decree to protect the Jewish people, and may our actions reflect the mercy we wish to receive." And thus, The scribes hurried to record Ahasuerus' new decree, while Esther stood firm, watching the providence of God unfold before her eyes. The Spirit of God was at work, ushering in a wave of transformation far beyond what they had fathomed. Yet even as the decree was written, tension simmered beyond the palace walls. In the shadows, Haman's wicked heart plotted revenge, and a dark storm was gathering. Little did they know, God was not finished with his plan, and a reckoning was soon to unfold. A divine twist awaited discovery in the depths of providence. For as the people rallied with renewed hope, and as the king turned his heart towards justice, the question still loomed large. What would come of the treachery lurking in the shadows, and how would God reveal his sovereign will through the unfolding events? As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the great hall, a palpable tension filled the air. Esther, emboldened by the king's decree, felt the weight of her people's hopes resting upon her. Yet, in her heart, she discerned an impending storm. The voices of Haman's treachery echoed in her mind, a reminder that loyalty and faithfulness would soon be tested. Outside the palace, whispers of the decree spread among the Jewish populace, a mixture of joy and trepidation igniting their spirits. To us, a new day dawns, some proclaimed, while others cast fearful glances toward the shadows where malice still lingered. It was then that Mordecai, Esther's cousin and guardian, pressed through the gathering crowds, his expression resolute, but eyes filled with urgency. He sought her amidst the din, finally meeting her gaze with unyielding sincerity. "My daughter," he began, even as the others around them fell silent to listen. "Haman's wrath shall not easily be quelled. His hate runs deep, and his allegiance to the king will not shield you, nor the rest of our kin." Esther's heart quickened. "What are we to do, Mordecai? I've spoken boldly before the king, but will it be enough to sway Haman?" "Your bravery has already caused tremors, Esther," Mordecai replied, his voice a firm whisper. "But the time for mere words has not yet passed. You must approach the king again, but not alone. Gather your strength in prayer and call upon our people to fast with you. Only through the might of our God can we hope to change the heart of the villain who lurks so close." Obedient to her cousin's words of counsel, Esther summoned a fast throughout the land, invoking her people to intercede alongside her. The streets resonated with fervent prayers, as mothers wept, fathers led their households in supplication, and children's voices united in fear and hope toward heaven. From the artisan's shop to the merchant's booth, the cry was heard, "Save us, O Lord, deliver us from the hand of our adversary." Meanwhile, within the walls of the palace, Haman's plotting escalated. Filled with rage, he stormed into the king's presence. "Your Majesty," he declared, "there is a people scattered among the nations, whose laws are contrary to ours. Their deeds are insidious, and they must be removed." Ahasuerus raised a hand, surprised. "Who dares speak of my queen's kindred in such a manner?" "They are the Jews, your king. They refuse to bow. Permit me to bring forth a decree where they may be vanquished," Haman insisted, clutching the king's acceptance like a prized jewel. "Let it be done in haste, so that all might hear and obey." And with heavy reluctance Ahasuerus agreed, sealing the fate of Esther's people with his signet ring, unaware of the providence unraveling within the hearts of the faithful. As the evening stretched long, Esther readied herself for another audience with Ahasuerus. Within her, a fierce resolve blossomed against the backdrop of fear. "If I perish, she murmured, recalling her faith. In the stillness, the moment came. As she stepped into the radiant chamber, veiled in grace yet aflame with purpose, she understood that this was the time appointed by God, that this was his design that she must embrace. The questions loomed. Would she unveil her truth? Would she risk all for her people? In her heart, she felt the heartbeat of eternity, the threads of divine destiny interweaving with her actions. For every perilous step bore the weight of a covenant promise that echoed through the ages. The unseen forces drew near, pulling the curtain on the next chapter, leaving them all to ponder. Would God's deliverance unveil itself through Esther's courage, or would darkness prevail as shadows lingered and Haman's plan took form? As Esther entered the great hall, a hush fell over the assembly. The radiance of her beauty flickered like a candle in the vastness of the chamber. Yet it was her spirit, aflame with determination, that truly caught the king's eye. Ahasuerus, seated on his throne, surveyed her approach, his brow furrowed with scrutiny, yet in that moment he extended his golden scepter, a gesture both gracious and fraught with weighty consequence. "What would you wish, Queen Esther?" he asked, his voice laden with authority and curiosity. "Even to half my kingdom, it shall be granted you." Esther's heart raced, awareness of her precarious position gripping her. With all the courage imbued within her, she replied, "If it pleases the king, let him and Haman come this day to a banquet that I have prepared." Ahasuerus regarded her with a blend of intrigue and eagerness, signaling for Haman to accompany him. Yet as they departed, a dark shadow loomed over Esther's heart. Her true purpose remained veiled, as she took one last look at the throne, knowing the peril hidden beneath the feast she had just orchestrated. Meanwhile, Haman, pure with glee, hurried home, exuberant with the honor bestowed upon him. As he walked through the streets, the cheers of the people echoed like music to his ears. Yet, pride and fury intermingled in his heart when he saw Mordecai, positioned steadfastly at the city gate. Despite the jubilation around him, Mordecai did not rise or tremble before the man of power. "Why dost thou refuse to bow?" Haman seethed, his voice low but seething with contempt. "Do you tempt the wrath of the king?" Mordecai, unwavering, whispered, "I am a Jew." His declaration hung in the air, a solemn reminder of his faith in the God he served. Haman's fury blazed hotter, igniting a flame of vengeance within him. In that moment, he resolved to not only destroy Mordecai, but to annihilate all of his people, crafting a plan more sinister than before. As night descended, Esther lay awake in her chamber, grappling with the magnitude of her mission. She recalled the words of Mordecai, "Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Her spirit crescendoed with the realization that her very presence in the palace was part of a divine orchestration, leading her to intercede for her people in their darkest hour. The following day, Esther welcomed the king and Haman to her banquet. As they reclined, feasting upon delicacies, Ahasuerus leaned toward her, curiosity alighting in his eyes once more. "What is your request, dear Esther? You have brought us together for a purpose." The air thick with suspense, Esther steeled herself, heart pounding with apprehension and faith. "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases you, spare my life and that of my people, for we have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." Ahasuerus, sensing the weight of her plea, demanded, "Who is it and where is he who has dared to presume to do thus?" In that moment, the stage was set for God's hand to be unveiled. In darkness, a glimmer of hope broke forth with Esther's revelation, and as the king turned in fury to Haman, beneath the layers of his plotting, the sovereign plan of the Lord began to unfold. For even as disaster threatened, God's faithfulness was about to emerge with unmatched splendor. Would deliverance come for Esther and her people, or would Haman's treachery seal their fate? The answer loomed just ahead, as divine providence intersected with human action, waiting for the appointed time to reveal its full glory. As the final threads of destiny wove together in the great hall, the tension reached its zenith. The king, raging with indignation, cast a fiery glare upon Haman. "You, wicked servant, have conspired against my beloved queen and her people. What treachery have you wrought?" His voice thundered through the chamber, echoing the righteous fury of the God of heaven, who watches over his own. Haman trembled before the king, his facade of power crumbling as the weight of his wickedness crashed down upon him. "My lord, he stammered, but the words faltered on his lips, silenced by the gravity of his evil deeds. In that moment, the truth pierced through the darkness, revealing the power of divine justice. The author of malice found himself ensnared in the very trap he had set for others. The decree issued by Ahasuerus to save the Jews rang with a triumphant sound, reverberating through the hearts of those who had long been oppressed. "Let it be known throughout the kingdom that the Jews shall defend themselves, and that no one will harm them," the king declared, his scepter raised high as a symbol of authority and protection. Esther, her heart brimming with gratitude, fell to her knees, lifted in prayer as the cheers of her people surged from every corner of the citadel. In that moment, The ancient tales of God's deliverance echoed through the minds of the Jews, reminding them of their heritage, the Exodus, the parting of the Red Sea, and the faithfulness of God in the midst of trials. With Haman's wicked plot undone, the perspective of fear shifted into confidence among the people of Israel. They prepared themselves to confront the darkness not in despair, but in hope, united in the faith that God would fight their battles. "The Lord of hosts is our deliverance," they cried in unison, standing tall against the evil that had threatened to consume them. In an ironic twist of fate, Haman himself faced the gallows he had built for Mordecai, justice delivered by the very instruments of his malice. As he hung upon the tree, the Israelites rejoiced, their hearts alight with the victory that only God can honor. They danced and sang praises, for the bitterness of darkness had turned sweet by the light of divine intervention. Days turned into weeks as the festival of Purim was established in grateful remembrance of God's mighty work, etched into the traditions of the people. They celebrated Vashti's brave defiance, Esther's bold intercession, and the faithful God who had preserved them through it all. Mordecai rose to prominence beside Esther, serving as a beacon of wisdom. As the lawful protector of the Jewish rights, he led the community with a heart rooted in the remembrance of God's deliverance, urging his people to remain steadfast in faith, even as history unfolded before their eyes. And so, the story did not close merely upon the pages of scrolls, but lives on in the hearts of all who seek the Lord. For such a time as this, they recalled, the words resonating through generations as a reminder that God's hand is never distant, but ever present, guiding his people through paths of righteousness. He who sits enthroned above the heavens watches over his covenant, and the legacy of Esther and Vashti flourished into eternity as a testament to divine purpose, as we, too, find our place in the ongoing tapestry of his love. Therefore, dear friends, let us hold fast to this truth. God is at work, even in the darkest of hours. And now, if the Lord has stirred your heart through this powerful account, you need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth so that more souls encounter His grace. Leave a like now, for every click shares God's light through the algorithm, guiding others into His embrace. I invite you to comment with your reflections. How has this biblical story impacted your faith journey? And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony. Send it instantly to at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. Together, let us empower hearts with the stories of faith and boldness that signify the beauty of our God's sovereignty.